So thank y'all for making it out today. I'm going to welcome up our panelists, who's going to introduce themselves in just a moment. John, you can come on up and John. We also have a fourth member. He's going to be a little bit behind, but we're still going to go to the plan, and he's going to join the conversation later on. Let's give him a hand as they walk in. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making it out today to this town hall. I'm Jasmine, and I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We have other organizations as well that will be recognized up here today, as well as Jonathan Green, who will be arriving later, but he is an activist in the community. And so today we're here as part of the general movement against police violence and police terror. As you see down there, we are here in honor of the ongoing struggle and the ongoing case right now for justice for Roger Fortson, who was killed here in Fort Walton Beach last year. He was murdered at his front door by a police officer. And as the trial has started, we are working with other organizations to build up momentum so people don't forget about this case. And so we make sure that we can put pressure on the justice system to give accountability to his family or have accountability from the police department and have justice for his family as best as they can have. And so the main demands for the Roger Fortson struggle are: we want to remove Sheriff Eric Aiden from office. He is a local sheriff, and there's an ongoing petition right now. It has close to 1,000 signatures right now. Basically, the way that they have handled this case has been very negligent. As we have been experiencing now, they keep moving the court dates around, making it very difficult for the family to come in town to be at the court hearings. And just a lot of things have happened. They had the wrong name on the warrant to get Roger's belongings. They spelled his mom's name wrong, and just complete mishandling of this case. Another of the demands is revoking Eddie Duran's bail bond because he is basically just out right now. He just can't travel. That's the only stipulation that he has. Revoking Eddie Duran's credentials so that he cannot continue to work as an officer. Full accountability for Officer Eddie Duran, and holding the government agencies accountable for their policy failures in this case, as I just discussed. And so this is not its own case individually. We know that and a lot of people in our communities suffer from police terror. Many of us have a story, or many of us are close to somebody who has a story. And so that's what this town hall is for. It's for us to discuss our experiences, possible solutions, and how we can continue the momentum to fight against injustice in our communities. And so I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, the work they do, and what this kind of work means to them. So we can get started with this.
Okay, so my name is Sonia Vasquez. I'm the CEO and founder of Speak Justice Action. I'm also the secretary of the ACP, and my reason for deciding to do Speak Justice 5 years ago, of course, the George Floyd incident is what triggered me to get into this fight. And I think that happened to George Floyd. I don't know if it was just me or I just didn't pay too much attention. Seemed like everything was just happening week after week throughout like really big kill in the hands of police. So that was my reason for stepping up and starting that organization.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? All right. We have live beautiful people out there. My name is Townhall. I'm the president of the Oklahoma County Democratic Office. First and foremost, Jeff, thank you for putting this together, this town hall, and everything. I look out and I say, I don't see a room full of people, but that doesn't matter. The fact that it's a matter that the people that should be here are here. Okay, and that's what we have to look at. We're looking at what we're trying to do. But as the president of the office, our main goal is for fighting for the rights and privileges their needs. Now, we're also out there to encourage voter registration and for individuals to get out and vote. Okay, voting is so key to a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today, because the people that are acting upon some of the things that we're going to discuss are people that were elected, people that were voted into their office. So voting, okay, and the action for voter turnout is seriously and highly important in our cause to do that. Okay, we're also out there in conjunction with that to endorse candidates. We're strongly going to be able to want to support any Democratic candidate that's out there. Okay, and it doesn't matter, race, religion, shape or form. Our primary focus is always going to be if there is a minority or African American candidate, that we definitely try to do our best to try to support that candidate when we're trying to run for and so forth. But other than that, our cause lately has been in conjunction with the Roger Fortson family, the mother of Roger Fortson, and their cause, and they try to bring that accountability. And that's the key word that she would use. She would not use justice, she would not use revenge, she would not use anything of that sort. She would use the word accountability. And I think that's very key, that we try to hold those in power accountable for their good, for their deeds that they're doing out there, for their wrong deeds that they're doing out there. But again, I thank you guys for the forum and everything we're out there to try to support those that need our support.
Thank you, John. Sean.
I'm a middle school teacher over in Florida. I've actually also run the summer 2020 after the murder of Floyd, uprising that takes place around the country then. I know the sentiments of Sonia as far as we're just trying to hold our officials and hold those responsible accountable for the murder of Roger Fortson, and also try to figure out find all the ways we can also build up the support for his family. So they're a lot. Son, sister, brother, and those having to do Lord, we can get out of that. We can just fight with the family. So, some of us we can hold people accountable for that, as well as make sure that we just support. I think we just go to a lot of need for all of us have. And I think that's like this, you decide to see that shows that there is some level of community support and not forgotten.
Thank you, Deshaun. And before I continue, just want to really thank Greater Peace Baptist Church for allowing us to have this forum here and hosting us today. They have been very, very easy to work with, and so I'm very appreciative of that. And thank you for bringing up Ms. Mika today. We did ask if she could be down here for today, but today she is actually hosting a birthday celebration for her other son who passed away due to gun violence. And so, our heart's with her today, and she said she's feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but things like this really do encourage her to keep going forward. And so we're just going to discuss some general topics today for our panelists. We have a few questions for them. And again, do y'all want to use the microphone? Because this one does work if you want to pass it around. So how this is going to go is that we have a few discussion questions for our panelists that we're going to listen to. And if you have any comment from the crowd, there will be time at the end for us to be able to share, our own comments, our own stories, our own experiences, our own thoughts, our own solutions, or ask any questions to our panelists. So we will go ahead and get started with our first question. So as you mentioned, Ms. Sonia, within the last decade, there have been major moments of mass mobilizations of people taking to the streets, organizing and fighting back against police violence. And there were major uprisings that we saw in 2012 after Trayvon Martin, in 2014 after Mike Brown, and in 2020 with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And even in Pensacola, we also had Tamar Crawford, who was murdered by police in Pensacola. And then that was during 2020 as well. So with all of these ebbs and flows of the movement, how can we as the community and as members of organizations on the panel maintain the struggle for accountability with our law enforcement so we can have more consistency in the movement going forward? So that's my first question for y'all.
I think they call that pass the mic.
All right. I did come with some prepared answers. I thank Jasmine for sending those because what I didn't want to do was, come up here and just kind of rattle on, information that is not pertinent to the question and to the cause that we're trying to do. So, I mean, based on the question that you asked, Jasmine, I'm not going to read stuff verbatim. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the reasons that I think, and some of the causes, some of the things that we can do in regards to that. One of those things is that we could try to do some type of civilian oversight. Now, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Okay, I was just talking to Sonia before we even came up here, and we were just talking about how in this community we need to work together, okay? So many times we have fractured parts of our causes going on in so many different directions that really the impact is very short-sighted. And sometimes we need to come together. I see a friend of mine's out there. He probably is like, gonna call me out, Steve Norton. He's with the Democratic Party here in Okaloosa County. And, we work hand in hand. I am not trying to go against what he's trying to do. He's not trying to go against what I'm trying to do. The same thing with Sonia and anyone else. We're trying to work together, okay? Because our sole purpose is one thing, and that is justice, that is accountability, okay? And that is trying to bring some reform based on what has happened in the past with people such as George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, so on and so forth. So another thing that we could do, I got two more things that I think are very important, and that is fostering transparency and open communication. Now, what that means is that, we have civic forums, not like the town hall that we're having, but actually, public forums that we could go to our council and we could speak to them about issues that are concerning to us, okay? With the police force, we have a voice. Sometimes we are silent and we're not taking action in regards to that. Sometimes we need to demand that they have full transparency, okay? In regards to their training, in regards to their reform that they're supposed to be having, in regards to previous incidents that have happened and everything. So we need that transparency to be open and honest with the community, all right? And then the other thing that I would like to mention is that we need to, address other underlying issues. And on that note, here's what I'm saying, is that a lot of the injustices that happened to George Floyd, to Trayvon Martin, to Breonna Taylor, and to others is really about their social economic class and so forth, about, let's be honest, the color of their skin, okay, where they lived, all right, and the life that they traveled. And that should not be any reason for someone to be unjustly murdered, okay, when it comes down to social justice. So sometimes we need to lend a blind eye, okay, when it comes to police reform and police justice in the community so that we see each other as equals, okay? We don't see there's a young black man, there's a young Hispanic man, there's a young Asian female and so forth, okay? We all bleed the same way. And that's how justice should be looking at us when they step out into this world and do their job.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much for everything you said, John. I think to the question of how do we maintain this momentum, I think it's doing things like this. It's building the infrastructure and the organization, because people's energies are going to ebb and flow. Folks are going to show up in mass numbers sometimes, and sometimes folks show up by the dozens or by the singles. It's not going to always be hundreds of people ready to join the movement. But I think it's organizations like Speak Justice, like the Democratic Black Caucus, like the PSO, trying to lay the foundation and build the infrastructure so that when people are mobilized, when people do feel the injustices happen, when people find out that a Roger Fortson was shot and killed in his home, and people want somewhere to be and some way to fight back, we provide that infrastructure. We provide that the groundwork for them to jump in and be involved in the struggle. I think it's all the work that we do in between. It's not necessarily the rallies or the big events or the things that everybody sees, but it's all that laying that groundwork and just having those relationships with the community and reminding folks that each of these incidents is not an isolated incident. What happened to Roger Fortson is not isolated from what happened to George Floyd. It's not isolated from what happened to Breonna Taylor. And I could rattle off names all day because we've seen so many over the last decade plus. I think it's also reminding folks that this is systemic. There is a systemic problem with policing in this country. We've all learned in recent years, especially with the new ways that we've been talking about it, that policing stems from like slave catchers, and there's a racial underlining to all policing and police interactions. I don't think there's any person of color who's not had a negative interaction with police, and most people of color, frankly, don't call the police because of these interactions that consistently get thrown at us. But I think it's also understanding that it's systemic, and when people are in an uproar, when people are angry about Roger Fortson, we're like letting them know that this is not an isolated incident, and we're not just fighting for justice for Roger Fortson. We're fighting for justice for every Black person who's ever been killed by police, every marginalized person who's ever been taken advantage of or abused by police or by these systems, and fighting for systemic change. It can't just be like we get rid of Officer Eddie Duran. Officer Eddie Duran is not an isolated bad apple, but he's a representation of a larger systemic problem. But I think bringing that energy and that understanding to people in the in-between time so that when something happens again, they're not just fighting this next battle. They're not just fighting for justice for Roger Fortson and then they go home, but they're fighting for justice for Roger Fortson and then they're like, but this is bigger than that, so I need to stick around. And I think that'll get people to stick around.
Thank you, Deshaun.
Okay. I think Mr. John and this young man kind of summed it up to what I was going to say, but hosting town hall meetings and the organizations that we already do have in place and keeping people aware, keeping people aware of the things that are going on and giving the understanding of the process. Because like me, I'm still learning the court process. I'm like most of the people are walking around here wondering, why does it keep being rescheduled? Why can't we just, is that fair? It happens. It happens. We need to have that understanding of the court system. We need to continue to write letters. We have a petition out there. We need to make sure that we continue to sign those petitions, because when we get quiet, then, that's a concern too. We have to let our voice be heard. We have to continue to speak up and fight for these different things that are going on. And the biggest thing, as Mika would want us to say, is accountability. It ain't like we're going around here hating people. We don't want to intimidate people when things happen that is not fair for them to stand up for themselves, for them to stand up for their sister, their brother, or mother, or whatever, that when their lives are being taken. That should be on the floor for anyone to have the right to stand up and fight for justice when their loved ones have been taken away in the hands of a police or by anybody. It don't necessarily have to be the police. But as Jasmine has said, these town hall meetings are good. The organizations are good. Try to get more involved. Try to talk to your friends, because a lot of people are intimidated. They are intimidated of these. Sometimes when I have to let people know and explain to them about Speak Justice Extra, hey, they all about just fighting for justice or we just out there protesting. It's bringing awareness and let people know that the things are happening. And, a lot of them, as they say, a lot of these situations has taken place to our Black men. And sometimes we feel like, hey, we're running out of things to do because it's still going on. The little incident that happened, I don't know where the guy was from, where they said his headlight wasn't on. They splashed his window.
Oh,
and Jacksonville, that's where it happened, yes. And it's still going on. So, at this point, I think it takes unity of all races, not just the Black and the brown, but for all us to come together. Because one thing we do know for sure, we do know the difference between right is right and wrong is wrong. So that's the purpose of these town hall meetings, is to bring awareness to what's going on with the Fortson family, what's going on in local area, what's going on in Florida, period. Because to me, it's not getting any better, it's getting worse. So it's time for us as people to come together and come up with something and try to fight back and find a way that we can stop some of these killings that's going on in the world.
Thank y'all so much for your comments. fundamentally, we can realize that this is something that we can fight against, and that it does take all of us. One thing that Miss Mika, who is Roger's mom, has been saying a lot of the times that she's been able to speak, have a mic and speak publicly to us, is that although we do, the Black community and Black men disproportionately face police terror. It happens to anybody, and it really happens to people of color just in general, a lot. And what she has discovered and been really grappling with is that this is not just a Black issue. We really need, everybody, all hands on deck. There are so many ways to get plugged in, and there's so many ways to keep up with what's happening. I mean, our injustice system really banks on us not paying attention. It really banks on us losing steam. It really banks on us just wanting to avoid looking at headlines. But when we realize that when we're in a struggle and we're not just fighting for Roger Fortson, we're not just fighting for, unfortunately, all of these other names, we're fighting for ourselves as well. I'm not from Fort Walton Beach, but I'm from Pensacola. And if something like this happened to me or my family members, I would want somebody to come from Nebraska to Pensacola to fight for me. So we have to be ready to always fight for each other in any capacity, because we're all in this together. And so, yeah, and it also takes these hard conversations with people in our lives. So we can't just keep ignoring this, because it's always at our front door. And so thank y'all for y'all's comments. I also wanted to mention Mr. John's point about just like our conditions and, being aware of our communities that are over-policed because of our economic conditions. And so this is a multifold or multi-pronged issue where, it's like a domino effect, everything kind of connected to each other. And so being able to always be in community with each other, trying to uplift our neighbors and our community members is also part of our solutions and how we build more unity and more consistency with protecting each other. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in our second question, which is, justice looks different to everyone, and what does justice look like to you? Whether you yourself have been victimized by any police violence or just in general, what does justice look like for you going forward? And I did want to also, just with that caveat with Ms. Mika using the word accountability, just to speak on Ms. Roger Fortson's mom, she doesn't use the word justice. Nothing could atone for her losing her son, especially the way she did. But she does want accountability. So even if you want to not speak on justice specifically, but accountability instead, you can do that as well. But I'll open the floor. Okay.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what justice looks like for us, is accountability. When we see things go wrong, and I love it that we have the young people here today. And again, Jasmine, thank you for this, because it's much needed. I wish more people would have came out, because we need to continue to educate and continue to feel free to speak on these situations. But accountability is the biggest thing. That's what justice looks like. It's holding that person accountable when they do those things, not defending them, not taking them to Burger King and, and doing all these different things and treating people different, because we know that there's a difference. We know there's a difference, and not, just pointing fingers, or just, it's not about race, but they do make a difference, because we see it. When a Black man is arrested, it's handled different. It's more aggressive. And when a white person is being arrested, we know that it's handled different. We all see it. We all see it. So the biggest thing is, as justice to me, is accountability, period. Not letting to me personally, I know it's the court system has its own rules and regulations, but taking 6 and 7 years after somebody done to kill your loved one just to get justice, that kills me, because we all know, and we all need to be careful, because like I said, this whole church should be filled up today, because we never know when this could hit us, could be right there at our front door, and we could be in the same situation that Mika Fortson is going through, Breonna Taylor's family is going through, and all the rest. We have Sonia Massey in her own home. It's getting so bold where, she had a mental illness, and, she called for help. Instead, she ended up being killed, and they still trying to, he is locked up. That's a plus, but they still in the struggle, because he's trying to get out. But accountability is big. It's big, because she reached out just for help in her own home, and end up being killed. She said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," and that was a threat. you know? So it's sad, but justice to me looks like accountability.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have to bring this home. You know, I brought this little blue tablet up here and with all these nice little notes and everything. But you know what? You know, I just have to be real. Um, I'm an African American male. Okay, all right, and I gotta speak on my 60 something years of justice and what I've experienced. Because the question was, how do you see justice and how does it affect you? Okay. And I'm a pretty calm guy. Okay. I'm not a, as they would say, radical individual. My son, when he was growing up and he was about 12 or 13, he asked me one day, he said, "Dad, are you a Republican?" And I said, "Well, what made you say that?" He said, "Because you go to church and you're very conservative, you're a businessman, all right, and you seem to get along with everyone." And I was like, And a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, that's what a African American male Republican should look like in his eyes. Okay, so in his youth, he saw me as someone that was not a threat. However, let me tell you about some experiences that I've had. Okay, has anyone in here, and I may get some hands that are raised, ever have a gun pulled out on you for any reason, no reason whatsoever? Got a couple of hands. Okay. How did that make you feel? Scared, belittled, somewhat, in a very weakened position because they had authority over you because they had a gun? Well, I saw some hands go up, so you understand how that can make you feel. Has anyone ever have the be walking and all of a sudden a siren comes on and you're questioned by the police? Anyone ever had that happen to them? Interesting. How did that make you feel? I want him to answer. He's right next to me. How did that make you feel?
Terrified and powerless.
Exactly. Now, I'm saying all these things because I'm wondering, and I'm looking at the ones that raised their hand, okay? And I'm wondering, is there a reason why some of these things were going on, okay? Has anyone, I got two more that's happened to me. Has everyone ever been in a store and all of a sudden security came and asked, "What are you doing? And why are you here?" Has anyone ever had that experience? Exactly. And it makes you wonder why. And the last one, I don't think no one's probably experienced this unless they've been in Atlanta or Chicago or California. Ever have the big helicopter at night shine the big light on you while you and your friend are just outside working on a car? And on the big voice says, "I need you to step to the side." And a cop comes and starts questioning us. Okay? All those experiences plus some more has happened to me, and it makes me say, why? None of those I was not doing anything wrong. None of those that I was being malicious or mischievous. Okay? But I feel like the justice system and the law enforcement system was not there for me, but it was against me. So when I hear about George Floyd just walking the streets and not really being a threat, but being choked, his life choked out, okay? And Trayvon Martin just walking home, okay? With I think it was an iced tea in his hand, and someone saw him as a threat and decided to kill him. And like she said, Sonia Massey, I'm calling for help. But for whatever reason, it makes you start wondering, does it have to do with race? And I hate to bring that
into the equation. But as a black man, for the 60 years that I've lived in this world, it makes me think it is. And I don't want to think that, okay? And I did see some hands go up that were not African American. So it makes me think that it is not pervasive. It is not like, okay, just because you're a black male or a black female, that all law enforcement is out to get you, because I don't believe in that. I have family members that are in law enforcement, and I know that they would not do anything like that. But one of the things that I want to say before I hand the mic over is that we have to do better when it comes to hiring people that are going to be in these jobs, with screening individuals that are going to be in these jobs, okay? And then when we input reforms, we have to make sure that those reforms that they're saying are being implemented and not just being spoken about. All right? So if we can have things happen such as that, maybe my son now, who is 30, can walk and not have the same experiences that I had when I was his age. And that's how I feel about reform.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the last thing you said, John, actually speaks really well to what I'm going to say. Because to me, justice is freedom from police terror. It's your son not having to endure what you endured. It's your son being able to walk around and not having to worry about these same interactions that have been happening for centuries at this point, happening to him too, or his son or his daughter, and it, perpetuating and continuing. I really like every time we've talked to Miss Mika that when we talk about justice, she does say that there is no justice. There's nothing they could do to Eddie Duran that would balance out what has happened to her in terms of losing her son. There's nothing that they could do that will bring her son back. There's nothing that they can do that'll make her feel like justice has actually been achieved, because that can never be restored. Her son is gone forever. That is a done deal. But I think when we talk about accountability and justice, to me, justice is no more police terror. It's there not being another Roger Fortson. They're not being another Tyler Crawford. They're not being another Sonia Massey. They're not being another Trayvon Martin. And again, there's so many names you can rattle off. And that's just the ones that have been publicized over the last 20 years. I mean, how many black people were killed by police in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that didn't get the same attention because there was no cell phone footage, because there wasn't social media? If without camera phones, George Floyd would have been choked out and only his neighborhood would have known about it. So in the scores and scores of black people who have been taken by the state, taken by police, for justice to me is a society where that doesn't happen anymore, where policing has been so systemically and radically changed that I can walk down the street and I have to worry about, when I see sirens, my heart stopping for a second. It's every cop that's ever pulled me over and made up a reason to search my car or to pull me out the car, have their hand on their hip, nervous because they think I'm going to do something, when I'm nervous that they're going to take my life right now. It's that tension not existing anymore because policing doesn't exist in that way anymore, because policing doesn't look like that anymore. And to me, it does require a full systemic overhaul. We need a new system. We need a society that looks differently than the one that exists right now. And I think in different cities we've seen different reforms that have dramatically changed the way communities even interact with police. And also to the point of like Sonia Massey, who was in her own home calling for help. A police officer should have never been there. Why do we fund I know for Pensacola a couple of years ago we looked at our city budget and it's like almost half the budget is spent on policing, but very little is spent on mental health counselors. Why was there not a social worker going to her door to help her when she's having a mental health crisis? Why are police, I work in a middle school, why are police walking around my middle school instead of community members who know the kids, who can interact and intervene? We've seen programs like where they have dads patrol schools instead of cops. And all of a sudden, fights are mitigated. Kids aren't getting in, there's less violence going on in the school. Kids are more focused because it's like, oh, that's so-and-so's dad. And when he said to chill, like, all right, I'm gonna chill out a little bit, like, because there's actually a relationship there. The community keeps each other safe, and we know that, and we've seen it repeatedly, but then we see our cities and our counties and our states choose to fund things that don't keep us safe. I don't think anybody in here, in general, would be like, yeah, when police sirens go off, I feel more safe. When an officer has pulled me over, I feel more safe than I did before, especially if you're not doing anything wrong. So I think, yeah, it's radical systemic change that changed our dynamic and our relationship to police. I mean, similar to John, I actually wrote a poem recently, and I'm not going to read it to y'all, but because I really sat and thought about, thinking about this town hall, how many interactions with police I've had that were both unwarranted and violent, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. Times that taken me and my friends out of my car and searched our car with drug dogs, thinking that we were running drugs through Gulf Breeze. Meanwhile, we were 3 preschool teachers going to hang out at a coworker's house. Times where a cop told me that, oh, there's been a lot of break-ins in this neighborhood. I was 15 years old sitting in my girlfriend's car. And I was like, no, there hasn't. I live here. And if there was, my grandmother would have said something by now, because she's in everybody's business. If there was break-ins, she would know. But you just made that up because you wanted a reason to pull me out the car. You wanted a reason to search me and wonder why I'm sitting here. Why am I a black teenager existing? And it's every interaction I've had, because I've never called the police. I've never asked for their help, because usually it doesn't go well. And every interaction I've had has been against my will, and then left me with tension, left me with fear. And to me, justice is that relationship not existing anymore. Me not having to worry about police pulling me out my car anymore. Me not having to worry that my nephew's going to get seen as a threat and get killed by police. Me not having to worry that my students are going to get shaken down or thrown to the ground by police just for playing in their own neighborhoods. So yeah, I think fundamentally it's no more police terror. Like this is a thing that has sustained itself for so long, and it takes radical change, and it's going to take radical change to remove this dynamic from our neighborhoods.
Thank you for y'all's responses. Your responses make me just come to the conclusion that it just seems like, justice really looks like not feeling subjugated in society. Like the police just have free reign to do what they want. And if they have any biases in their heart, we might be dead the next moment. And it looks like, having justice looks like having more accountability, but also having such a process where these people who are literally in charge of, allegedly they're in charge of protecting and serving our community, they have access to a gun, they have lethal objects right in their pockets, but they're not vetted properly. And often the most racist of them, get to hold their position for as long as possible, with little to no accountability as far as like what their record looks like, how many people they have encountered with who had a poor interaction with them. There's no reviews for cops, that we have in the system. And justice also looks like, not ignoring the racist legacy of what policing is and how it operates in our society. It looks like actually dealing with these disparities that we can see. I mean, we do see that, any of us can fall victim to police violence, but we do have racial disparities that we do need to atone with and actually amend in our society. And so I appreciate y'all's answers. And while y'all were talking, it just makes me think of, over policing in our communities. And I'm just like, there's a slogan on the shirt that says, build more schools than prisons. And then I think about like the psychological terror of policing in our communities, and Black kids and kids in poor communities shouldn't see more police cars than they see ice cream trucks. They see police cars all the time. They see police interactions all the time. They see it at their schools. And so this really is, there's a lot that is wrapped up in what justice looks like. It's not just, cop kill somebody, they go to jail. It's a lot more than that. So I appreciate y'all's responses. Okay, so just for anybody who came in a little bit later, after we get through our last question, we will open up the floor for everybody to share their comments or ask any questions. And so just keep that in mind. And we also have some refreshments in the hospitality room in the lobby. So for our last question for y'all, and we kind of touched on it a little bit, what is your vision for policing going forward in terms of the role that they play in our society and possible solutions to end police brutality?
That's a good one, and I often think about it. To me, is the hiring process, and it is really, really hard because I have, did some work with the police department, and it's you pretty much tapped on this. Is the background of the individual that you hire, because when you hire them, you may not even know, this person is a racist. You can't look at them and tell, hey, you're a racist or you're a racist. So it's kind of hard to determine that when you're interviewing somebody. I think it should be a process where that if they had any conduct issues in a job that they had before that, all that stuff, it need to be a deep background check when it comes to that hiring process. Not saying that's going to help, because you that's still something you can never determine within that person. But what my problem is, because I do have a Black son, he travels a lot at night, and it bothers me because now, I'm seeing it happen more and more and more each day. And I ask you, how do we comply? How do we comply? You know, you try to teach and you teach your kids, hey, make sure you have those licenses out, make sure you drive until, you get to some light. And they doing things in the light. They see that we recording them because we have the cell phones now. We can record you, but it doesn't seem to matter. So how do we comply as Black men? And not saying it can happen to you too. It can, and I commend you, for because we have other races in here. And it makes me feel so good, even with my organization, to Speak Justice. It makes me feel so good when there's unity because we all understand. Because the one thing, like I spoke on before, right is right, wrong is wrong. It don't matter to me what color you are, okay? It does not matter. But how do we comply? And I think that's something that needs to be taught. And I think that, most police departments have had students where they come into the department and they teach them the right things to do. And then like the young guy that I mentioned in Jacksonville, he didn't do anything. And then to hear him talk, they was like, well, he had his insurance was suspended or whatever, but he complied. But then the young man said, I was intimidated. I just sat there. And I mean, he just sat there. And they bust the windows out. Then they got him out of the car. They punched him a few times. I think he ended up getting stitches and all. And he complied. So what more is there for us as Black women and men to do when we are stopped? That is very intimidated. He said on national TV, I was intimidated. I was scared. That hurts. It hurts because we should be and feel free to drive at night. It's almost like I don't even want my son to be driving at night. And sometimes it don't even really matter if it's during the day, it still happens. But what do we do? And I wish we had somebody here from the police department because they probably really could really answer if they were here. But what do we do? What more can we do? So that's a big concern to me. And and I just can't understand it. And it seems to me it's never gonna stop because you have all police are not bad. We know that. But we do have a lot of them that are bullies, okay? Bullies with a gun. That's what I call it. Bullies with a gun that feel like they have the power. And not only just bullies with a gun, most of the time within the system, we hire people that do have a problem. They are intimidated by Black people. So you got our white people that's intimidated, and we got people that are that's holding these jobs that when they stop us, they are intimidated of us. Like with Roger Fortson, he opens his door, and Eddie Duran says it was the aggression in his eyes. It was the stare in his eyes. Can you explain to me? Can you please help me with that? So how do we comply?
Thank you, Ms. Sonia. And Jonathan has joined us. Just wanted to give you a brief second to introduce yourself and your experiences and why you're here and why you are in this fight for against police violence.
Right on. And thank you all for having me. Thank you for being here. And let me apologize to you for my tardiness. In transparency, to answer my colleague's question, what do we do to comply? My wife, who is here today, and myself were, most recently, I was arrested with my wife in Morgan County, Alabama. That's near Huntsville. It's Decatur, Alabama. I have my Juris Doctorate, my law degree from Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge. I have my Master's of Science in Criminal Justice from Troy University. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice as well, South Alabama. Those pieces of paper mean nothing if my house burns up in flames, right? They mean nothing to law enforcement as well. Me articulating through me standing my ground with my First Amendment right yielded the officer busting my window out with one of my sons in the car and my wife, and following I have a bracelet that says, am I being detained or free to go? I sell that I don't sell it. I teach people as part of my business. That's the only question you have to ask a law enforcement officer. If you are free to go, what do? Leave. If you're being detained, you have a follow-up question. It's on the inside of the wristband. What articulable facts justify this detention? Now, they don't have to answer that question in the moment. They can, if they can write it later in the report, but it has to be something that they articulated they saw at the time. The reasonable suspicion is a crime has occurred, is occurring, or is about to occur. So my lived experience, that was my third or fourth arrest. My first one was in 2006. I was suffering mental health crisis. I'm diagnosed with bipolar mania, PTSD, anxiety, insomnia. Got a whole slew of them. But that was 2006. I was 19. First time I suffered mental health crises. I fought Loxley police in Bay Minette, Alabama, driving from South Alabama to Pensacola, thinking my house was on fire, but I was suffering delusion. The officer got out of his car in 2006 when they didn't have tasers. I got out of my car. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Do you know who I am?" And my mind, knowing as a black man in America, my ancestry. My great-grandmother came from Baldwin County, and her parents were the first freeborn generation from that county. My grandfather, I can trace my ancestry. My third great-grandfather was the first black elected judge in South Carolina and state legislator after emancipation. He was removed from office by the governor because he gave fair and impartial rulings. Where does that leave the poverty of my family over generations? So what do we do to answer that question if we're stopped? The law enforcement officer, before busting out the window with my wife and child and myself inside, and I told him out of fear of him, said I didn't have rights while I'm passing through the jurisdiction. Said I don't have a First Amendment because he gave me a lawful order, and my lawful order is to stop and comply with anything he gives me a lawful order on. We have officers not trained in what the Constitution even means, what the Fourth Amendment right to privacy even means, the fact that you need a warrant to come in my home, the fact that I can be armed in my home, like Mr. Fortson. My wife and I both have concealed carry permits. The guns in our car weren't an issue. It's my being black in the car was an issue. We were going 56 and a 70 and had window tint with Florida plates in Alabama. And he said, that doesn't matter. We're in Alabama's jurisdiction now. So what do we do to answer that? I have no idea. I went to law school, so I could have an answer. And to this date, as of April 30th of this year, I still don't know. It escapes me. So I'm here because as a freedom, and also I went to law school to not practice law. I went to bring that knowledge. Malcolm X couldn't be a lawyer. Fred Hampton couldn't be a lawyer. How do I get the knowledge of what was legal to have in law that persons of African descent cannot read or write, or is punishable by death? Well, let me go understand these words that they put in these things called laws to see how I can change the world for my people. And not just my people, understanding that my people is all people affected by oppression. So that is why I'm here today in the freedom fight that I embark on.
Thank you for your introduction. And we are continuing this discussion on this last question, which is what is your vision for policing going forward in terms of the role that they play in our society and possible solutions to end police brutality? And if you have any like examples of different areas. So for example, I know like Baltimore, they were able to get some different violence interruption programs put in their city. So just discussion on possible solutions and even reforms, you know, specific things that you want to see in your vision for this going forward.
Pass the mic. All right. I've been listening to what everyone has been saying here this afternoon, and you know, some very good insights and some very good information that I think we all can take back home with us and everything, and share that information with everyone. But you know, the one thing as everyone was speaking that was going through my mind as I shared with you guys, you know, with the last questions about, you know, me as a African-American male, and then hearing this gentleman speak eloquently about how sometimes it's almost like you have a target on your back, okay? So how can you de-escalate that? How can you remove that systemic, as you were saying, police, process that has been in our world, in our country for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the one thing that I think of, and I'll be short on this, is that it seems one of the things, if I was in that field, which I'm not, okay, but I have family members that are in law enforcement, and from what I've seen, it seems, and I may not get the term correctly, but the fact that they have this blanket immunity when it comes down to what they do, and they're not held accountable for their actions, and they are protected by the system when they do wrong. And if you think about that for just a minute, as an individual, okay, as a son, as a daughter, as a father, a mother, as a grandfather, as anyone, in that you can do something to someone, but knowing that even if that is wrong, the chances of you being reprimanded are very small. That, to me, invokes a lot of power. It tells me that I can just go free range if I want to, especially if you understand the philosophy, the practices, the manners of that organization that you're with. That's why going through maybe Alabama, and I know Alabama, my wife's from Alabama, I'm from Georgia, and there are sectors of this community in this world that they breed this hostility, this blanket immunity that it doesn't matter if you're from here or you're not from here. If I feel as if I can do wrong by you and not be punished, I'm going to continue to do that. So my thing, if it was possible, if there was a wish or a power or something that I could bestow on the world, and that would be that police and law enforcement, that would be removed, because I don't care who you are. Everybody, like I said, whether you're a child or a mother or a father or a grandmother or a grandfather, or whoever you are, we should all be responsible for when we do wrong, and not feel as if we do wrong, I will not be held to that standard like anyone else. So that would be my desire for ending much of the police brutality and injustices and the wrong that's going on in this world.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that blanket immunity is a huge part of this. It's that there is no accountability if you're a police officer. As you were speaking about that, it made me think, like, I'm a middle school teacher, and if I teach the wrong version of Black history, they'll take my teaching license away. And a society that says that I can't teach Black history, but they'll take my license, but they won't take the badge away from somebody who murders somebody, it's not a just society. It's not a society that's thinking people first. But I think to answer the question of, like, what is my vision for policing going forward, is that policing is not this huge part of our lives in the way that it is now. I mentioned earlier, we looked at the Pensacola City budget years ago. The fact that, like, half the budget is spent on policing, that is common across the entire country. That's not unique to Pensacola or Fort Walton Beach or Florida or the South. That's nationwide. Huge cities like New York City and Los Angeles spend billions of dollars on policing, and spend a tiny fraction of that on schools, on mental health counselors, on social workers, on things that our society actually needs to function. They spend a fraction of that fraction on housing for people, on actually meeting people's economic needs. There is so many, I mean, Jasmine mentioned it, like violence intervention programs, community programs. And I don't mean community programs like having a community center where the kids can play basketball, but actually like actual mental health counseling for these kids who are experiencing trauma via poverty, who are experiencing trauma because police are rolling down through their neighborhoods every day. Actual community intervention programs where the community gets together to keep themselves safe. Like I mentioned earlier, like having families more involved in schools, to where instead of cops roaming the school, there's dads roaming the schools. There's dads intervening in violence and potential issues on campuses. It's just the amount of money that we spend on police reflects the values that our society has. And our society values property and profit, and it doesn't value people. And I think in my vision for a future of policing is a society that values people before all those other things. So when there's a hurricane, the police aren't posted up in front of Walmart making sure you don't steal bread to feed your kids. There's a collective of people who are being paid the same money that we're paying police, could be roaming the neighborhoods to make sure that people are safe, taking trees off people's cars, getting them off of people's homes. Instead of us we do that. You know, when you see it in like Louisiana where there's huge storms, there's like the Cajun Navy, and people are just roaming like around on their own boats, saving lives, while the police hang out in front of Target to make sure you don't go steal a blender during a hurricane, during a blackout. You know, so my vision for policing is that policing is not this huge overarching like part of our lives. It's not raining down on us all the time. It's not roaming through our neighborhoods constantly, running up millions of dollars in city budgets, billions of dollars across the country for things that don't actually help anybody for the most part. Very rarely do police actually prevent any crimes. They usually show up afterwards. Community intervention programs prevent crime. Mental health programs prevent crime. Quality schools prevent crime. Lowering the poverty rates prevents crime. Alleviating homelessness prevents crime. Those are all these things we could be investing in. That's our dollars. It's our tax dollars. It comes out of your check, and they spend your check, the money that comes out of your check, on policing, on making sure the cops have new SUVs to roll around your neighborhood in, making sure that they can blast the AC all day while kids in the neighborhood don't have access to clean water or are hot and there's no AC in their houses. It's restructuring our society in a way that values people, that puts our money and our tax dollars into things that collectively help us all, rather than having like a standing army that protects property sometimes. And I say sometimes because even then they don't do a very good job at that.
Thank you.
Right on. And to echo the sentiments of both my colleagues here, I think part of it comes from the solution. We have to begin to stop thinking criminal justice reformation. We have to start thinking criminal justice transformation. We don't want to reform a bad system into another bad system because we already saw what the bad system transformation got us. Slavery is abolished except as punishment for crime, says the 13th Amendment. Except as punishment for crime. Well, slavery went from the slaveholding states to all 50 U.S. states and territories. So that way now the United States population, being 5% of the world's population, yields 25% of the world's prison population. We know this statistic, that if we're going to have criminal justice transformation, we have to deal with the criminal justice system holistically. So the prison industrial complex is the reason all the programs that Mr. Deshaun just named and outlined that would cure society's ills, the prison industrial complex is the reason why they won't be. The prison industrial complex secures police having budget in the city budgets and the county budgets to police communities they don't live in. The ability for judges to have their jobs, because judges need bailiffs and judges need court reporters and stenographers, and to pay the juror $12 for the day or however much it is now, to miss work, to serve their civic responsibility to decide guilt and innocence. And even with that, making sure we show up to jury duty even if we don't believe it, because we are the jury of peers judging whether this person who's black or brown, who's going to be incarcerated, versus this person who may not be black or brown, getting a plea deal. And then when it goes down to the plea deal aspects, when we look at immunity for the police officer Bill of Rights, well, if United States citizens have a Bill of Rights, why, and that's supposed to be the apex of rights for the citizens of the United States, why is there a citizenry that has an elevated class of rights? If there's an elevated class of rights, every U.S. citizen should have that class of rights. Or if we are all here because we're equal, that elevated class should be brought down to an equal status, that immunity. But that's the caveat. If the average person on the street is overcharged during a crime for you to plea out to what you should have been charged with, well, had you been charged with that originally, you would have pled down as a misdemeanor, right? You wouldn't have pled this life sentence down to 20 years. And your lawyer thinks he did a good job because he gave you the best defense possible and feels good for taking your 20 racks. Or we create a system that if we I don't know, and this is my theory. The question: how do we transform criminal justice? Because it's also the corrections, the prisons aspect. We can do community control and police ourselves, like the Sean said. As a matter of fact, I know it works. When I was with the Attorney General's office in New Jersey, I developed a statewide pilot program called the New Jersey Community Peacemaker Collaborative. The goal, because the Attorney General in New Jersey is appointed by the governor, and the Attorney General then appoints every prosecutor in the state, all 21, I got to walk into every prosecutor's office and say, hey, we're doing this. And you don't have to, because mediation is voluntary, but the Attorney General's office is sponsoring it. You can join whether you want to or not. Who appointed you is sponsoring it. So you can join, and give me your list of community partners so I can go to them and tell them what they can join. So we have a balance of power. So you can come sit in that meeting and sit at the table as an elected official with this person, and this person, and we even that playing field. What does that look like? What if you ever seen the movie Mandela with Idris Elba? They house Nelson Mandela on like a farm. What if we have tiny home farm communities that persons who are guilty of the most heinous crimes, the sexual assaults, the pedophilia, the murders, the violent criminals can go to a tiny home farm community where they have to learn agriculture and farming. If you don't eat if you can't grow your crops, it might give you incentive to grow some crops and not commit murder. Your family can come visit you still. The only unnatural environment on this planet is the prison, because it's the only place procreation cannot occur. So what happens when you put testosterone or estrogen in elevated places in one housed area with lack of resources? The same thing in prisons. It's the same thing that happens in the ghettos, the projects, which projects got its names from the project that it was a science project to see how people in close quarters would cohabitate with deprivation of resources. And when the project ended, they shifted Black and brown people into the ghettos, into the projects, to continue perpetuating its effects. So transformation would be my answer.
Thank you all so much for your responses today. Can everybody, let's give them a round of applause for being our panelists today. So we have discussed a lot, and ultimately it seems like from the responses that there's a lot of things that we envision to be much different going forward. This includes these laws and the structure that tells cops that they have a safety net if they do anything wrong, whereas if we do something wrong, we get fired or we get sent to jail. There's an incentive, for them to police the way they do because of these for-profit prisons. That runs or operates as a form of legal slavery when people do go to prison, and that there is a lot of things that we can do as a community to build up our stamina and our unity to be able to fight back whenever injustice does face us, and that there are solutions that we can find. I mean, these solutions that we're discussing and these possible ideas, they're not going to just be given to us out of the goodness of our system's heart. We have to create the equality that we want to see. We have to create the justice that we want to see, and we have to fight for the accountability when we need to. And so there's a lot that can be done on our end as community members, and there's a lot that we can demand as far as having the society that we seek in this world. And so at this point in the evening, we are going to switch over to our open forum. And so we will have, I will run around with a mic. If you would like to just raise your hand if you want to speak, share your story, have any questions or just any general comments. But before we do that, I just wanted to share as well that on this list of demands that we do have for Roger Fortson's case, there is a QR code on here that will take you to the GoFundMe for his family. It is going towards their travel expenses. His family is from Atlanta, Georgia. And so every time we have a court date, they make all these arrangements to come down here. It's very expensive. Deshaun mentioned a little bit earlier, but Roger really was the breadwinner for his family. And now with him being taken away, the family is really having to fend for themselves in a way that they obviously were not expecting. So please get the link to this GoFundMe and share it around. Additionally, there are some petitions as well. There's one petition. The main petition is to get Sheriff Eric Aiden revoked. And the only way in the state of Florida to do that is if the governor does it or they resign. And so the petition is a call for the governor to remove Sheriff Eric Aiden. So just wanted to have those brief announcements. So yeah, it's time for open forum, and y'all can also join the open forum. It's not just out here. So we can have a hand already.
I just first want to say thank you to all the panelists and to everybody for being here. My name is Sarah. I'm from Pensacola, and I wanted to just share a little bit about my experiences with police that, as a white woman, obviously, starting with, I guess, in the scheme of things in my life, Hurricane Katrina, I'm from Pensacola, but I was at an age where I was becoming politically conscious when Hurricane Katrina hit 20 years ago. I was getting politically active. I had people who came to my school because they were displaced by Hurricane Katrina. And I was really disgusted and appalled to see how the police were used to essentially wage war on the people who were stranded in New Orleans, who are not having their needs met, who are being abandoned by the federal government, shot at, just really crimes against the Black community in New Orleans by the police at that time. And I think that was my first indication, like something is wrong in our society. And then, fast forward a few years, I was a teenage mom. I was experiencing domestic violence. I had a period of having a stalker after that. There was a few times where I needed to call the police for what I thought would be my safety, and the police were uniformly unhelpful. And I was like, okay, the police don't help, victims of a hurricane. They terrorize them. The police don't help victims of domestic violence and stalking. They condescend to them. What are the police for? I kept wondering, what are the police for? I started to connect the dots a little bit because I would see after a disaster in 2018, Hurricane Michael devastated Panama City. I know we all know that, or near Panama City, Mexico Beach. I was helping with relief efforts. The police were posted up outside of dollar stores that were broken down, just protecting those dollar stores from so-called looters. Meanwhile, people were starving and the Red Cross was not there. They were not expecting this level of devastation. So again, I'm like, okay, what are the police for? They're here to protect the property. They're not here to help the people. 2019, my neighbor, Tymar Crawford, Deshaun mentioned his name. Tymar Crawford was outside, I was outside. Tymar Crawford was returning home. He was killed by police in front of his 4 children, brutally killed. And I saw firsthand how the police lied about what happened to the news, and then the news reported the police's story as though that was what really happened. And you could not get the news to say something different, no matter how many neighbor witnesses said that's not what happened. No matter what, the police's story was the official story. And it took the community organizing consistently, hundreds of people marching and just really demanding for this officer to be fired, for him to be fired, and demanding for there to be charges, for there to be a grand jury. Unfortunately, that officer, yeah, he was fired, but he never faced justice, or, he never faced accountability, walks around a free man to this day. Tymar's children don't have a parent. His partner, who I'm still in contact with, her life has been forever changed. And the city had to give them a payout, but the payout was nothing. And I'm rambling, I know, but I think it's important to look at this pattern of one person's experiences and then collectivize the experiences we all have, and then look at the pattern of what's happening in our society. Why did the news, and why does the news always say whatever the police want them to say? And why does the city always defend the police officers? And why is it that in the state of Florida, our governor made it illegal, our legislature made it illegal for states or cities to defund the police? They said it, Pensacola, half the budget goes to police. We could have had a movement in Pensacola to change that, to put those resources in the hands of the people, a democratic movement for the will of the people. That's what people want. You can talk to anybody. We've talked to a lot of people. We know people want the resources to go to meet people's needs, not to endless policing. But our governor made it illegal for us to even have that in our community. And so it's actually a question of democracy, because it feels like that they want us to think that we have a democracy and we can vote in change, but actually what we need is a people's movement that makes our system more democratic in the first place. And so I just want to appreciate that we're here together. I know it's not the biggest group, but every single one of us here represents a family, represents a community, workers that we work with at our jobs. Every single one of us wants to see a more just world. And that's what it's going to take, is our involvement and not waiting on some savior from on high, because the system is fundamentally anti-democratic and we have to organize to change it. And so I just really want to appreciate everyone's contributions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other hands? Anybody else want to share, including people on the panel? I like your shirt, by the way.
Thank you. I'm just going to say, because I got a bad knee. Originally, I'm from Philadelphia. For me, just sitting here listening to everyone, I really thought about my first adverse experience with law enforcement. And for me, it happened when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And my father, who was from Adel, Georgia, was driving from Philadelphia to Georgia with me in the car. He was driving in Virginia, don't know what county, don't know what city, and he was pulled over. I don't know if he was speeding or not, but I do know that he was handcuffed, he was placed in the car, he was driven to the courthouse, and he had to pay the ticket before he left. He paid the ticket, and my mom and I were on the side of the road. He had to go pay the ticket, they drove him back, and then he got back in the car. And my mother and father, very talkative people, I don't remember my father saying more than 20 words for the rest of the trip there. For myself personally, growing up again in Philadelphia, I'll be here for hours talking about my contact with law enforcement. The biggest thing that had an effect on me as a teenager was stop and frisk. Stop and frisk meant that law enforcement can stop you at any time and ask you for identification. And if you did not have an identification, then you can be detained. I think between the ages of 16 to 17, 18 years old, I was detained 4 times. And they can detain you up to 48 hours before you're released. I was robbed by cops, $20, $25, whatever was in my pocket. I never got it back. I physically saw a cop take what was in my pocket and put it in his pocket and put me in the car. So these things do happen. For me personally, I purposely wore the shirt because I'm not saying in no way, shape, form, or fashion that we need to do what Huey Newton and Bobby Seale did in the 60s, but we need a movement. We need something to move the needle. And personally, I don't know what that is. I don't believe force begets force. I don't think that's the answer. I think shoe leather, talk, interaction are a couple things that we can use to fix things. I've been here since 2004, 2005. I was in the military and I just decided to stay here. This is great that people did show up, but it's not enough people here. I really thought that coming through the door was in the wrong space. And again, for me, I don't want to be long with him, but Roger Fortson, again, I was in the Air Force, he could have been my son. And that's what I really think about. Every time I see his face, he was a high, fast flyer, a term that we use in the Air Force. He was moving very rapidly in the ranks. And just to hear his command speak of him, I know that they had things in place for him in the next 2 to 4 years of his career. Being a former high, fast flyer myself. And it's just sad, it really is, that he lost his life in the way that he lost his life. To me, he was murdered. He was killed in his own home. That's my thought. A judge is not going to change that thought or my thought process about what happened that day. and how he lost his life. And for me, being 54, almost 55 years old now, it's good to see young people out and about, and lack of a better term in the church, raising a little hell. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Yeah, I mean, we talk about it with the Roger Fortson case, and it couldn't be, more cut and dry describing just who he was as a person. And, regardless of who he was as a person, a police officer is not the judge and jury. They're not the ones that's supposed to determine whether you're guilty or not. Whether you are committing a crime or not, you don't deserve to be murdered and slaughtered on the street by a police officer. And so I really appreciate your comments. It does take a lot of community involvement. We can't just, leave each other behind. Even in the middle times, when it's not a major movement going on. And so, yes, we have, small attendance today, but this is how we build. This is how we have to start from somewhere. Next time there is an opportunity to do a town hall. Next time we have to pack the court, to demand justice for Roger Fortson. Next time we have to do something for a different group or a different cause, we bring more people with us, because one day we can fill this church and then some. And so that's what it takes, is not giving up. And so, yeah, I appreciate everybody for coming out today, for sure.
I did have one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Received a flyer or anything, and I'm curious. I live in Niceville. How do you get the word out when we have community events? Because, the few people of color that do live in Niceville, I doubt if they've got the memo. And I didn't see anything at the library. This is a church, and I don't see the people who attend the church I would think would be in here at least. So I don't know how the word is being passed on. And even though, folks have a lot of really great ideas about, how they feel we should move forward, I don't really see much cohesiveness in how we're organizing people and things like that. So that's my question. I don't know if it's a question. Actually, a friend was saying that she was going to come, and she showed me the flyer on WhatsApp. But I rarely talk to her, maybe 3 times a year. So it was really hit or miss that I got this information. And then I didn't have much time to share the information. So it's a shame to me that there's just not a way to get this information out to a greater number of people, So that's my question.
It's a good question, and it's hard to do. My group specifically, we're in Pensacola, and so when we were able to have time, we came over here and went door to door flyering, as well as having social media flyers and stuff like that. But it is difficult because there's so many people to reach, and if only so many hands are on deck, it is difficult. But we have to build more community connections to where it can be at the library, where it can be at stores and barbershops and places like that. When any group is hosting an event like this, we have to build our connections. So when you have an organization or you have a business or you have an event, we can all be promoting each other's things. And so, that is a good question, and it's something that has to be worked on for sure.
On Facebook, you have Blacks in Government. You have the local NAACP, which I don't even know what their events are. And then you have, I think once a month, several churches, or quarterly, they meet to discuss community issues. So there are some organized types of meetings, but who knows when they are and what day or what.
And also, I was going to respond to that as well, in addition to my statement. So a lot of this, for instance, PSL chapter from Pensacola is helping with the organizing of the town hall here. Expanding membership, not just within organizations, but organizing organizers to be able to have that cohesive movement. But it does start at, for instance, the early town halls to then build at which, preaching to the choir, no pun intended. But in these spaces that we're in, it's harder to galvanize this community when a majority of us live in Pensacola, assisting with the oppression in Pensacola, and then coming here, the travel time alone takes the time in the work out. That having community partners to, hey, we're doing this over here. So building those coalitions, building those collaboratives, it's still the grassroots work. In a capitalistic society, operating off fewer budget, operating against endless dollars of tax dollars that are working against us and keeping the people in a certain position. That's part of, and the statement I was about to make right before you grabbed the mic was, and it was dealing with the first question that I was tardy for, solidarity. Our solidarity, and it's a cliche, my enemy's enemy is my friend. We have a lot of individuals who are fighting for liberation, fighting for freedom of oppression, but then we fight each other amongst ourselves in a way that if all of our goal is over here and our goal is liberation, but we're distracted by our divisiveness here, our distraction is one, why we're killing ourselves and why law enforcement has a clean bill of immunity to kill us as well. So we can't see the goal, let alone the distraction we're distracted by. So the solidarity of the people who are fighting for freedom of oppression. Thank you.
My name is Diane Dillard. I'm a resident of Fort Walton Beach since 2009. To your question, are you on Facebook? Okay, Sonia Vasquez on the panel. She is the CEO for Speak Justice, and that is a good clearinghouse for everything that's going on. She always shares information. The other thing is, I'm also a member of Okaloosa County NAACP Executive Branch, and we also have a Facebook page. So that's one way to find out. We meet first Thursday of each month. And as far as using the church, they did use the church, but it's not a church function, so that part. But I have a question for, I'm sorry, is it Jasmine? You said there's a petition to get Sheriff Aiden removed. Okay, do you know, as far as the process, what power does the petition have? Oh, okay, well,
The petition itself can't be removed.
okay,
Based on our statute.
right,
It doesn't matter really to sign it.
okay. And we know the political climate right now with the governor, but I just wanted to know that. I mean, it won't stop me from signing anything, but I wanted to ask that just to clarify that part.
Yeah, and Ms. Keeler, she understands.
Right, right,
And, a tool of the petition as well is to raise awareness about the case and get people to sign on and get communication about their.
exactly. Oh, another thing, I'm sorry, I don't want to point, but John Armour is the president of the Democratic Black Caucus. And so we also have a Facebook page, and Steve is, what is he, executive board chair for Okaloosa Democrats. So there's a lot of people involved. If you get on Facebook, if you tell me your name, I'll make sure you get to all those pages. But that's where that's where we share a lot of information, and probably other other social media too.
Hey, Jasmine, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I just speak my mind, and I speak my spirit. One of the things that, and I'll just say it like it is, and I'm a man of God, okay, and we're in a church, and I'm not saying that because we're in a church, but whenever my spirit speaks to me, I have to have the option to say what it wants me to say. And, you know, based on the young man's question there, and thank you for your service, about when he walked in, and he was somewhat disappointed about what he saw here. And the young lady in the back that says that I did not get the information, okay? You know, I can't help but say that people got the information. I'm sorry. They just decided not to show. Okay? Now, why is that the case? That's something that we really need to discuss and troubleshoot, because I know that more than 100 people could have filled this here church that knew what was going on today. But something made them decide that this was not important. This was not something that was worth the hour or 2 hours of their day. Even though much of what we've talked about, as we've already seen, affects every one of us, not just black men, not just black women, not just Hispanics, but everyone, Caucasian. You were speaking about how your experiences after Hurricane Katrina and in the school systems and during, the hurricanes that has happened down in Tyndall and so on and so forth. Okay, these things affect everybody. So there's not a reason for anyone that knew what was going on not to show up. So I just feel that don't feel as if the information is not getting through. Okay? Because I believe it is getting through, but people are making a conscious decision not to speak. And that could be due to fear. Due to fear of repercussions, due to fear that if I show my face in a public forum, that it may get back to someone at my job. And that could cause some problems, okay? Or if I affiliate myself with a certain organization, it may be construed as if I am doing something outside of what I should be doing amidst my own following and my own forum. But like we've said, we have to work this thing out together, okay? And just like in church where they say, bring a friend to church with you, bring a friend to the pew, that's the concept. Sometimes if we know that we're coming, can be responsible. Maybe I should have been like, hey, I'm going to a town hall in regards to Roger Fortson and the injustice in holding the accountability of the sheriff department. And I should have brought someone with me. Pulling and tugging, okay? All right? Kind of like going to the gym. I don't want to go, but once you go and you get the workout, I think most of us will say it was worth it. Same thing here. Sometimes we have to bring people in whether they want to or not, okay? But I do think the word is getting out there. People know what's going on, and they knew about this here forum in this town hall. They just made a conscious decision not to show.
I just want to say really quick before I pass the mic. Yes, it requires so many hands on deck and a variety of tactics, because we did have it on social media, but on social media, you have to break through the algorithm. The Facebook algorithm is nasty work. You really have to fight through it. Sometimes I'll see posts from an event that was like a week ago, and that was my first time seeing the post on Facebook. And so that's why we do spend a lot of time trying to do like in-person outreach to break that algorithm, bringing the flyer right to your front door. But yeah, I mean, this is just what we have to build, and we are naming the problem. We have to keep building to where we're not starting from scratch all the time. But yeah, I wanted to pass the mic.
A year before Roger Fortson was murdered, the person who murdered him worked with me. When I heard who did it, I was absolutely not surprised. Okay. There was no shock. When I was saddened by the news of Roger's murder, but I was not shocked by the person who did it. Being a Hispanic woman, when I worked with him, one of the things, of course, the last name, you think you're going to make a connection due to that. He didn't even want to admit openly at that point that he was. So when you deny who you are and you try to be something that you're not, that's going to always be an internal battle. And that's not an excuse for him, because I have no doubt that he was in a position to think that he was better than the person who opened the door. And I believe that that's why that happened. I know I'm not probably going to be real popular if the sheriff's department, because we still work very closely with them, but I 100%, based on my interactions with him, and just for clarity, I was in a position of power over him. I was a supervisor, and the arrogance and the indignation that was received from him made me absolutely believe he felt that he was better than other people. And that may just be my perception, but I know that other people experienced it as well. So with that, with that being said, every event that I can get to hopefully have justice for Roger, I will do. I have two beautiful Hispanic daughters. One, you will look at her and you will never, ever know. The other one currently walks around with her papers so that if she is picked up by anybody, she can prove that she is a United States citizen. So I have two children experiencing life in totally different ways. Because one, you'll look at her and you'll be like, this girl is not Hispanic. The other one, there is no doubt. Same mother, same father, two absolutely, totally different children. But I have one child who walks around with her birth certificate, ID, and everything because she walks around afraid that she is going to be deported daily. So it's people who you see, you may not know those struggles, but there is a lot of stuff going on right now. And I am like him. I was very surprised when we first walked in, but for us, I think we only heard about this 2 days ago. I don't know what took so long for it, to get through, but that was our experience as well. And just one more thing before I go. In 1993, I moved to Florida from California. In California, I lived in San Jose. My ex-husband and I were sent here due to military orders. We were stationed at Hurlburt Field. I had so excitedly decorated my mailbox with the name Viramontes. I was thrilled to death to put that up. I was so happy we bought our house, all those things. My daughter and I were driving to the store, and I saw 5 men dressed in Ku Klux Klan full gear, the hats, everything, strolling down the street like it was Easter Sunday. I immediately turned around, went back home because this was kind of pre-cell phone, went in the house, called 911 because I thought this had to be a crime. And I was told to get used to it. I then called my ex-husband at the time and said, where did the military send us? I grew up outside of Philadelphia, then I was in California, then I came here. And my children, my oldest mostly, we've experienced a lot of racism in schools by the police. We actually took our name off the mailbox because I said, I don't feel safe in the neighborhood that I'm in right now because they're gonna know that we're Hispanic, and my ex-husband was deployed all the time. So since as long as I can remember, this is the area here that our children have been raised in. I'm not surprised by what happened to Roger Fortson, although I am sad. And I pray that that his family will get, I would say, I guess the word is, there will be accountability, not justice, because nothing will bring him back.
Thank you for your comment, because, seeing the connections and communities feeling and being targeted, it's very sad that your daughter has to walk around with her papers in fear because people are just getting rounded up. I mean, it's the same playbook for these different agencies.
Stand up. I'm Steve Norton. I'm the chairman of the Democratic Party here in Okaloosa County. I'm here as a witness. I haven't experienced much of what y'all have experienced and shared with us today. But it does sadden my heart that we have to live like this. It's not the way to go. And the Democratic Party does not always agree on everything. But the one thing that they do, they have a heart. The other side apparently has no heart. And it really moves me to hear these stories. And the only thing I can say that would make any difference whatsoever, and it's not immediate, is our coalition that we have already started needs to come together. And the only thing that we can do to change anything is elect better people. That is the truth of it. That's a big ask in this community. It's a big ask. And we definitely need young people's support. We need old people's support. We need financial support. We need media people, because, people my age, I'm 72, we're not savvy on all of the computer stuff and the social media, but when you can't hear about when something is happening, and I represent almost 24,000 Democrats in Okaloosa County. Republicans have 84,000 registered voters. And here's the issue. We had a great candidate. We had Kamala. She was a great candidate. We had Gay Valamont. She was a great candidate. And we lost. And the turnout was almost pathetic. Now, we had a rally, a No Kings rally, and the only way we were able to get 1,000 people to show up, 1,000 people in Fort Walton Beach at the landing. And some of you were there. The only way we were able to do that is by coalition. We had Indivisible, the No Kings people, we had the Black Caucus, we had the Democratic Caucus, we had Gay Valamont, and I can't even remember all the organizations. So all I would ask is that you please register to vote. You don't have to register Democrat, but you won't have a voice in the primary elections in this state unless you do register one party or another. So that's about all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, yeah, Amber.
Yeah, I do agree that we should, the coalition building is really important. I think that, kind of tying back to, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, all the way in the back. Her name, she was complaining about not hearing about stuff. Sorry, I can't hear you. Catherine. Okay. Catherine was saying potential places we could focus outreach on potentially maybe work with other groups to do outreach. Do you know where would be a good spot for that? For getting the message out into the community, especially people who would be interested. I think and this is a general question for the room. If anyone has suggestions for that, it would be very useful for outreach and continuing the momentum and getting people involved with the stuff.
And yes, Ms. Catherine, I just want to add to what Ms. Diane was saying. I know we work day in and day out on Speak Justice Extra on Facebook. We post everything. People send me flyers. I try to make sure I get that information out. So please make sure you join it. Speak Justice Extra. Normally, I am doing a lot of footwork. I haven't did much footwork right here lately, but I do plan Jasmine has been coming from Pensacola, passing out flyers, and maybe you say you were in Niceville. Yeah, so maybe that's one of the spots that we need to start hitting as well. And I plan on doing more footwork, and I'm gonna try to find a spot locally where that I can have a place where you can come by and pick up those resources and those different things and keep the community more aware. But I pretty much agree with Mr. John. A lot of people know this was going on because I'm not gonna say enough. On my page, I have over about 1,500 members, and I do know the majority of them are locally. So the information was out there. I can't tell you how many times, and I mean, I got people in Niceville, not just Fort Walton, people in Niceville, Fort Walton, Pensacola, everybody's on that page. So, and a lot of people take the flyers or whatever that I post, they share it to other pages. So when I say that anything that come out, me and Miss Diane and my other admins is out there. It's their choice if they want to come and participate and be a part of this fight. You know, we cannot force people, but you know, like pretty much like Mr. John said, it could be intimidation. A lot of times that's what it is. But listen, you guys, that's why I commend you young men and women so much. Don't be afraid to stand for what's right. And that's what you got to get it. They have to get into their head. Don't be afraid to stand up for what's right. Because this can hit me at my front door. This can hit you at your front door. It can happen to any of us. And you have to know how to come together and fight together. Because all this separation and division is not going to get us anywhere. It's really not. It's really not. Because it's happened like the deportation. It hurts me. You know what? I really avoid watching TV right here lately. And you know you have to watch some of it so you can be in the know of what's going on. But it breaks my heart to know that that's happening. You know, I have a mixed family as well. And it breaks my heart. You know, it breaks my heart. Right now, I tell my son to make sure that we took pictures of his birth certificate. You know, have it on your phone. If you get stopped, just flash it, you know. And you should not, we should not have to live in fear. We should not have to live in fear. And I'm so sorry that, you know, what's taking place now. But hey, this is our life now. This is our life now, you know, and we have to, being separated and divided or whatever, is not going to help the situation. We need to come together. We'll work hard to try to get this information out to Niceville, Jasmine, because she's been working really, really hard out of Pensacola, and her PSL crew. So we'll try to get that information out to Niceville, and I think I had some people as far as Freeport that reached out to me. It was like, well, I didn't know about this until last minute, so I can't make it. So I do thank everybody for showing up. I know Jasmine is gonna be doing that as well. And I do hope the next time, whatever that we plan, that we can have more people. But hey, this is enough, because I know that you guys are gonna spread the word. Just continue to be safe. Just continue to educate your kids to be safe. Because right now, you know, it's not even about, you know, really the race. We're all in a struggle right now. You know, whether it's, I mean, we're all. The system right now and the government, and I hate to say this, because I don't like being political, it's not in our favor right now, okay? Well, it's okay, because I could be political as, I forgot I was in the church. But we're all in the struggle right now, and it's time that we pull together, because I don't feel like I'm any better than you. I don't feel like I'm any better than Mr. John. If you have any problems, like Ms. Diane was saying, I'm also the secretary. We do have the president of the NAACP that's here, Salva Williams. Would you like to come down? We do have the president of the NAACP. We also have a Facebook page as well. Please feel free to join, because whatever information, most of the time you see on Sweet Justice, a lot of times I try to refrain for putting everything that I post on Sweet Justice on the NAACP, because we have certain guidelines, but the majority of the stuff is on NAACP. And please feel free to join. It's a good organization. And they have so many different things that they work on out in the community. So please feel free to join that site, and please make sure I'm repeating what Miss Diane said. The Okaloosa Democratic Black Caucus. Join Okaloosa Democrats. Mr. Steve is really good. He has been to every Roger Fortson's event, every one of them, every single one of them. He's very supportive. That's all I can say. And if we could get everybody to be as him, he don't have to do this. Okay, you guys, you don't have to do this. We all need to come together. Because like I say, like I was just said a few minutes ago, the way things are going now, it's not in our favor. So it's going to take us to pull together. This thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
The hearing, the
The
last
hearing,
yeah.
yes, the hearing was scheduled for Monday, the 13th, and it was rescheduled for October the 13th if you want to come out. Most of the time, what we do, we pack the court, as Miss Jasmine mentioned. Then after the court, we do a little rally out in the front. So we should be doing that this time. I don't know if Jasmine mentioned it or if you know, Miss Fortson was sent a letter of cease and desist letter. So we're going to be talking. Yes, she was sent that. So I don't know if it's to calm us down or to stop us from rallying. So, but we will be meeting on that, Jasmine. I'm sure we'll be having a meeting on that just before the next hearing to make sure, because we always try to keep everybody in their safe zone, to make sure that it's okay for us to do what we're doing. We shouldn't have to ask permission. But we really shouldn't have to ask permission. But we all know how things play, and that when it comes to certain things, it's really a fighting battle to do those things. But if we all pull together in big numbers, okay, you guys, I can't say enough. When you pull together, and we all know that in big numbers, we are powerless. Okay, we have to come together. We have to come together. Like Mr. John was saying, the next time we plan something, bring a friend. To me, I'm happy just to see the few people that we have here. I know there was a lot of things going on today. Like they had a lot of back to school events, giving away free backpacks and different things. And maybe the word just didn't get out because everybody don't do social media. I'm trying to make up some excuses for some other ones, but really this church should have been packed because yeah, right. Yes. So, but I just don't want people to be in fear. I want you to feel Speak Justice Extra is a safe zone. The Okaloosa Democratic Black Caucus is a safe zone. We want you to have, I built that platform for us to have those open discussions. I have so many people to reach out to me in my inbox because some things they don't want to post, okay? And that's fine. Just as long as I have that open discussion with them and I'm of some help to them, it makes me happy. So if you're not on it, please join. And that's about all I have to say. Just don't feel like you don't have anybody, or don't live your life in fear. To have your daughter, live in fear. It's sad. It's really, really sad. But we'll keep praying and keep coming together, and we'll keep pushing and doing the best that we can.
I know we're kind of hitting our time limit here, so I'll try to be quick. A couple people brought up that, they wish this room was packed out today. And, how do we, and even the first question for us as a panel was, what do we do kind of in these in-between times? How do we sustain a movement? And I think every single one of you all who showed up today is doing that work of building and sustaining a movement. The next court date, like was mentioned, got moved to October 13th. But that means we have 2 months to build a larger movement. That means we have 2 months to get everyone we know. If you didn't know about the court dates before today, that means you have 2 months to tell everybody you know. October 13th, take your lunch break at the time of the court date. Like if you're at work, figure out you can take your lunch break at that time and show up to the courthouse and build this larger movement. Like I say, I mentioned that there's a lot of different solutions and different things that we've talked about today, but ultimately, it's going to take a mass people's movement that is bigger than this room. It's bigger than the dozen or so people that are here. And in those in-between times, I mean, Jasmine mentioned that the PSL has been coming out and doing like literally door knocking and handing out flyers, putting them in people's hands, making sure that they're aware. We also have like a system where we text people and email people about events. So Ms. Catherine back there mentioned like not hearing about it. Before we leave, please make sure I'll get your phone number because we will text you before the next thing we do that's in Fort Walton Beach or in Niceville or even things in Pensacola because we want people to be aware. We know that, like Jasmine said, the algorithm is not kind to us. The algorithm is not kind to people fighting for justice. They'd rather put memes or videos or whatever else on your feed before they put a town hall on your feed, before they put what's actually going on and matters on your feed. That the people who run those systems are the same people who profit off of those prisons. You know what I mean? They're not wanting you to know that this is going on. But it's going to take a sustained, large-scale people's movement, a multiracial movement, a multigender movement, a movement that encapsulates everyone you know, everyone that we know. So if you heard about this from a flyer or you saw it on social media and you want to make sure you get plugged into the next thing, come find me or Jasmine after that. We'll take your phone number down. We will make sure we text you. We texted military members that we've met who wanted to join in the struggle. And if they were in town, some of them were out of town, but we're like, next time I'm there. I'll be at the court date or whatever else is going on. Because in between election seasons, in between like these moments and times where people mobilize and get energetic, we have to keep a movement built up in those in-between times. 2025 is not an election year, but there's still work that we can all be doing. There's still ways that we can collectively be joining in the fight and building up a larger movement that doesn't wait for us to act every 2 or 4 years. Like I said, everybody who showed up today made a political decision. You became a political actor. You're part of this democratic people's movement now. So the next step is to show up to the next thing and to bring somebody else and get plugged into these different organizations, get plugged in to work that is happening. And then bring someone, like it's been said, bring a friend with you, bring a family member, tell somebody. There's nothing better than physically handing someone a piece of paper and being like, put this on your fridge, don't forget. Because we can't leave it to the algorithm. We can't leave it to the Facebook pages and the Instagram because it may never come across your feed. But people will remember the conversation you had. People will remember the flyer you handed them or the person who knocked at their door that told them about the next event. And we have 2 months to tell everyone we know on October 13th, the court needs to be so full that they have to have someone standing outside. And then at the last court date, we did pack the court. There was tons of people who showed up. People took off work. People drove in from out of town. People made an effort to show up. And if this was your first Roger Fortson event, you would have seen that courthouse and been like, wow, people really showed up and cared about this. But the reason they keep pushing these court dates back is to kill our momentum. They don't want people to 2 weeks later be ready to show up for the next thing. They're like, no, 4 or 5 months from now. Let people forget what happened. Let people not be as plugged in or lose that momentum or lose that energy. So in these in-between times, in these months and weeks that we're waiting for the next court date and the next time to fight for Roger Fortson, that we have to figure out other ways to plug in and to stay connected until the next court date. Like Jasmine mentioned earlier, there's a petition. I'll GoFundMe for Ms. Mika to help her with travel costs. There's actually a benefit show in Pensacola. If anybody's going back to Pensacola tonight, there's a benefit show tonight. That's going to be happening at 7. The doors open at 8, so it's going to be going into the evening. But there's a benefit show, and all proceeds from that show are going to go to Ms. Mika and their family to try to help them with travel costs and just the general economic disruption that has happened with the loss of Roger Fortson. So yeah, there's ways to get plugged in, and if you're not plugged in, like I said, come talk to one of us and we'll get you plugged in. There's everybody in here. I want to leave with y'all's phone numbers and emails so I can make sure that the next time there's something, I can reach out to you. And if there's somebody you want us to reach out to, I'll go by their house. I'll shoot them a call. I'll shoot them a text, a call, an email, because we do have to build this larger people's movement, and it's going to take sustained, arduous, sometimes exhausting work to get a room full.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments before we close out this evening? We are right on schedule. I don't see any hands. I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause, please. And all the good work that they do in the community. I mean, it can look like your work, whatever you contribute to the movement can look like anything. Not everybody has the same capacity, not everybody has the same skill set, but we all have a part that we can play. And so everybody who gave us their comments and their remarks tonight, everybody who goes out and talks to their community, everybody who shares a flyer, everybody who shows up to a court day, who shows up at the town hall, anything that we can put towards this movement is necessary. And so, and we know that it's necessary every year, not just in the high moments, not just when we have a Democratic president, not just when we feel like we've had our gains met and our reforms met. We have to push further so we can make sure we have our rights guaranteed, so we can actually get the society that we want guaranteed, not that we have to keep clawing at and trying to get crumbs every so often. So we know this takes community, we know this takes consistency, and that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we're gonna put towards the struggle for Roger Fortson to get accountability. Again, the court date was supposed to be August 11th, and they have moved it again to October 13th. So we just need to make sure until then, whenever we are calling for the community to pack the court again, that you are made aware of that, that you share and spread the word, because we are going to pack the court. We have to make sure that Roger's family and this court system know that we have not forgotten about them, and that we're going to keep fighting until they get accountability. So again, thank you all for being out tonight. Make sure you talk to somebody you never talked to before, meet each other. We have to build this community that we want to see. So thank you all for coming out this evening, and we will have something planned, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you.